See you there.
Are we ready? All right, why don't we get started here? This is our normal monthly Board of Directors briefing, and we have a full agenda, and we start our agenda usually with general manager comments. So I'm going to turn over to Neil McFarland, our general manager, to tell us what's happening and what we need to know about for this month.
Well, very good. Thank you, Mr. Board President. Happy New Year to members of the board.
Thank you.
Those I
Same to
haven't
you.
had a chance to see. I wanted to start first with the issue of operator fatigue, which of course is subject of an article in the Oregonian on Sunday. And I tell you, I do not quibble at all with the article's conclusion, which is our hours of service policy needs to be reformed. I do want to share a few details about that with you and make sure that you sort of understand where we stand with all of that. And this is a long-standing issue that TriMet management has been working on really since 2010. The story stemmed from when a MAX train hit a bumping post at the Expo Center in 2011, and the presumption was that or speculation that the operator had fallen asleep. We tell you that the operator has been and through our disciplinary process related to that, but I can also tell you that hours of service was not an issue in that incident. Number one, the operator was on his Monday. In other words, he had had 2 previous days off preceding that incident. Second is that we have a good hours of service policy for the rail side. Federal regulation allows ODOT to impose hours of service regulations on TriMet for the rail side. That same authority doesn't exist for the bus side, and that's where we need reform. And we've begun working this literally in 2010, where we sent a proposal to the ATU to change the hours of service. We kept that dialogue alive through 2011, but through all the correspondence, the bottom line for the union at that time was without a change in federal or state rule or regulation that required it, they preferred to stick with the status quo. So based on that, we have included a revised hours of service policy in our labor contract proposal, which was released on December 1st of last year. So I don't want you to think that that we have been ignoring this problem. We know that this is a problem that needs to get fixed. The article did focus on some extreme examples on the bus side, and there's no question in anybody's mind, period. Nobody should be driving a bus for 20 hours straight or 24 hours straight or do these double back shifts without adequate rest in between. But we do need the ATU to come to the table and negotiate a change in this policy. We have a policy that goes back to year 2000, and we need to bring that up to current standards. We, again, because of the regulation on the rail side, been able to do that for the rail operators, but not for the bus operators. Yesterday, Shelley Lomax, our Executive Director for Operations, sent another letter to the ATU welcoming negotiations on this topic and requesting negotiations on the topic. We've heard through the media the union may be amenable to that at this point in time. We certainly hope so. I would tell you that change is coming in this area one way or the other. With the MAP 21 legislation that the Congress adopted, there is broad safety oversight regulation now vested in the FTA that wasn't there previously, that allows FTA to regulate, and they'll do that through the ODOT safety mechanisms to regulate the bus hours of service. And from personal conversations with FTA officials, I know that that is coming. But I would tell you that I'm calling for these actions now, the best result is always through negotiation, and we call on the ATU, and we pledge our cooperation with the ATU to negotiate common sense, sensible hours of service policy that any of you would, I think, want to say is a good result. But I'm also taking some actions now independent of that, and I've sent you a piece of correspondence I shared internally with all employees as of Monday. And just to reiterate the actions I'm taking is, first of all, asking all employees individually to reignite to focus on safety. There is individual responsibility associated with this, and we need to all make sure that we're focused on that. Second, I'm asking everyone to report any situation where it appears that there is fatigue, to make sure that that gets reported. And again, I want to be very clear that I'm asking other employees to do that, not as a gotcha, but as a concern for the well-being of our passengers and our fellow workers. So that means that if there is anybody who's looking fatigued, we should note it to our management and make sure that there is a conversation that follows up in a constructive way to make sure that, again, our individual responsibility is being highlighted. Third, I'm asking all of those who work directly with our frontline employees, our station agents, our supervisors, our station management, to be much more watchful related to this. There's an element of their job which is called fit for duty, which is making sure that they have some interaction with operators before they hit the road, and to make sure that there is not an overabundance of fatigue or other kinds of impairment available. So we want to sharpen that. And I'm also asking internal audit to really expand a review that's already underway related to hours of service. So we make sure that we are in compliance with our current proposal policies. And the policies are strong on the rail side. Again, it's the bus side that we do need to see some improvement in. And with that review, also focus on best practices. So we make sure that our station agents, who often do the call down when a restaurant needs to be filled, have the best tools available to them related to making good judgment calls on this issue. I'm charging our safety and security executive, Harry Supporta, with monitoring this package of actions. I've also called for him to create a more complete fatigue management program that really looks at all elements of work, and that is actually a topic which is already underway, but we'll continue to pull that together in a very strong, comprehensive program. But again, I would want to reemphasize that as far as the hours of service, we need the ATU to come to the table. We're encouraged by some of the comments that we've seen lately, and we're very pleased if that results in a direct conversation where we can begin to negotiate a change in this policy with the union, because I think that's very important. I would say that if we can't come to some agreement, we would certainly welcome a change in state policy or legislation to change this policy overall. We think it is important and needs to be done. So, but as you know, this hours of service issue is one of a number of elements of our ATU contract that need reform. It starts with the healthcare benefit. It starts with, it includes the issue of absenteeism, which is closely related to this problem, and how we can begin to monitor and help our employees. And it includes other, I think, positive aspects of work rule changes that are very, very out of date in terms of our current contract. Mr. Board President, I have a few other items to talk, but you may want to pause and see if there are questions or other comments you want to.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate that. I also know there's somebody here who'd like to present a petition to us today. So I guess questions or comments to the board now, or would you like to hear from the person who has the petition that's been set in front of us first, then maybe make some comments? Want to do that?
Yeah.
So why don't we, and I don't know the person's name. You want to just come up here if you want, or from there? Is that you?
No, it's me.
It's you, okay.
Yes. Sure, where would you like me?
Well, we're going right here. Well, I'll tell you what, I can see the press wants to get over here with the camera, so.
Good to see you. Didn't really prepare anything.
Okay. Maybe tell us your name.
Yes.
Address.
Hi, my name is Noah Heller. I live at 4023 Northeast Cleveland in Portland. I take TriMet virtually every day, and it is how I get around and go to work, see my family, see my friends. So it's vital to me, as to a lot of folks I know. I was deeply concerned when I read this article, and kind of shocked that there are folks working as many as 22 hours a day. That's not only a risk to myself as a passenger, it's a risk to the drivers, it's a risk to pedestrians, and it's a risk to anyone who shares the roads with them. And it's unacceptable. I understand that this has been something that's been going on for years. that this has been a debate between the union and TriMet folks, but safety can't wait. This should be non-negotiable. It's not something that should be a line item in a contract. And if folks can't come to an agreement, we have to say enough is enough. We have to say the state needs to prioritize public safety, and the governor and the state legislature needs to say this is not acceptable. We can't wait another 6 months, we can't wait another 3 months. This needs to change, and if it doesn't change now, then the state needs to act this legislative session.
Perfect. Thank you for coming. Why don't you stay there, maybe ask some questions of you for both the general manager and or you. So any comments or thoughts from the board? I have a few, but I'd turn it to you first.
Yeah, I'll
go
first. Oh, you can go first. Well, certainly, I want to applaud you for coming and let you know that we share the same sentiments, that safety cannot wait. We do need this to happen and to happen as soon as possible. And if we cannot come to a negotiation or agreement between TriMet and the union, I would also go to Salem and do whatever to help get some legislation that passes this. But I am very hopeful with the MAP 21 that's coming that they will address that as well. But that may take some time, but it doesn't keep us from doing what we can do as quickly and as positive as we can. I would call upon all of the community to come and support this. Get the facts, understand what's happening, and then help us get this passed so that we can continue to keep the safety going for not only the drivers, other drivers, but passengers as well. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you also, Mr. General Manager, for your lead in this and for keeping us informed.
Well, I want to first start by saying thank you for everyone that's here in regards to this issue, and thank you, Noah, for also coming and attending and being an ardent supporter of mass transit and public transportation. You know, I first want to say that as an individual citizen, this does concern me. It concerns me greatly that you know, we've got this issue, as you said, Noah, that it's not something that should be negotiable. You know, as I think about the safety of myself, my relatives, my friends, my family, the drivers, everybody that rides the TriMet system, it's critical that we continue to push towards a system that's going to be safe and secure. And so it's of high importance to me as an individual, but then also as a board member to continue to push forward to something that's going to allow us to ensure a system that somebody can step on. We can continue to regain the public trust in something that we hold so dear to us. I'm a huge supporter of our system, and many of you have heard me say this before, as an opportunity to go from poverty to prosperity. It's something that allows us to transit our community in a way that allows folks to find a job and continue to move towards that prosperity concept. But this is a critical issue that is of great importance that we need to make sure that we take care of and we need to approach. And you know, as I sit here today, I've got a myriad of questions that roll through my mind that we'll continue to have to deal with. But I certainly want to reiterate to the public, to the team that exists here today, that you know, from a board member perspective, and I know the rest of my board members share the same thing. As you know, board member Steve Clark walks through the door. I know that we're very, very passionate about where we're headed in regards to security and safety. You know, Neil, there was as you addressed many of the key issues, you mentioned best practices, and as I think about what we have on the rail side, and I think about what we've been able to implement there outside of a contract because of federal legislation, what is as we begin to talk about the same thing on the bus side. Best practice is where we like to start many times to say this is where other entities and agencies are doing. Is there any construct, is there any outline that you can share with us today? I know I don't want to go deep into detail, but what are some of the overall changes and adjustments that we can begin to understand or look at to say that these are the things that we could see coming down the pipeline that's going to make our community more safe?
And I can give you sort of a sense of those at
Correct.
a very high level, and if we can certainly get into more detail. But the bottom line of it is just sort of some very common sense rules in terms of what a bus operator could do. So for example, a minimum separation between the end of work and the start of work of the next day. And that, frankly, is a topic that we could negotiate with it, but it needs to be the standards when you sort of look at best practices, that's probably about 10 hours. Now, maybe some urgent situations where that can't occur, but generally, as a kind of a regular routine business, about 10 hours is the best practice. There's also a number of hours per day you can work, even with overtime, and that should be limited, and I think the best practice is around 14 for that. And that would be an extreme situation again, but nonetheless, that would be the maximum. And then I think, in addition to that, there are rules for how many days in a row somebody can work without a day off. And that's, again, a negotiable item that in most of the rules and regulations we see somewhere around 12 or 13 days in a row with no days off, and then you have to definitely take time off. And I think you're beginning to see that these are not really draconian rules. They're very common sense standards. The final standard I wanted to note was the number of hours per week somebody can work behind the wheel, and that usually is limited to about 70, and that's usually the basic federal standard. So those are really where best practice stands right now. And I think, the other key element of this is, and I think as the article alluded, we have had some shortage of operators because of increased retirements and also having to staff the streetcar this last year. And we have been doubling up some of our classes to actually replace those operators. But it is a 6-week training course. We can only put so many people through training at one time because of the number of trainers and facilities that we have related to that. So our inventory, if you will, of our operating staff has grown of late, and so some of the problems that we saw this summer aren't recurring as well.
So that inventory that you just referenced, are we going to see a more consistent inventory level that allows us to,
Yes.
to address the issue?
Yes. And we have changed our practices actually to begin to advance that even more rapidly as we monitor in real time retirements and other people who may leave our service. So I think to some extent we have addressed some of those issues in the past. And the other thing that we're trying to do is just generally reduce the number of hours per day of an average shift for an operator. And that we have been making progress on that, and we'll continue to. And then that, all those things get together. But I also wanted to come back to one of the other items, which, as you know, is a key provision of our contract proposal, which has to do with absenteeism. Now, right now, we run 10 to 11% absenteeism on the west side, and that's a very costly up to 11%. For every percentage, I'll remind you, of absenteeism on an operator side, it equates to about $1.3 million in cost to the agency, because we typically have to replace those lost hours with overtime, with something on overtime. So again, if we can work hard to reduce the level of absenteeism, we have a positive effect, and a positive effect on the overall hours of service issue as well. So there's a lot of interacting, as you can see, variables in this equation that come to, if we can get them to work in the positive direction, we'll have a great result.
So Steve, you came in late, but I think, looks like you had maybe a comment or a question.
And I apologize for that. Do not be out there right now. It's not a good place to be. Neil, I think we have to continue to do your things that you're doing, except we need to eliminate the word try. We must compel ourselves to foster a change in contract provisions to allow for a regulated number of hours that operators maybe work or may work. We're not restricting someone's right to employment, but providing for safety provisions that ensure the safety of the driver, the passengers, and the community that we serve. And I realize this is a negotiated contract, not a stipulated contract. You cannot stipulate the terms of the agreement singularly. However, I think as an agency, we can stipulate what we expect in terms of numbers of hours that someone should be able to work. We're not precluding someone from working 40 hours. We're saying you cannot work more than. And that's, I come from the private side, now the public side, I realize I'm not in a contractual labor situation. You may know more, and you may have addressed why we cannot do that before I arrive. But we have to eliminate the word try. Progress is not sufficient. And I know you agree with that. I mean, we want safety to be the rule, not an aspiration. And my comments aren't to ball you out, or the agency, is just to say the line in the sand should not be a wavy line. It should not be a try line. It should be what you said as part of the safety goals of the culture. The second is, if we don't do this, who will? Will the federal government come in and make a requirement? Will the State Department of Transportation come in and make a requirement? Will the state legislature come in and make a requirement? I think it's the responsibility of the board and the leadership of the agency, and we should do it. We should establish those provisions right now.
Couldn't agree more. And again, it is a negotiation, and that is the best outcome, because it can be done quickly, and it can be done, frankly, with the input of the union, their workforce is represented in the union, which makes it something they own as well. That would be the best outcome. But there are, as we've talked, there are other ways to achieve it. So we will not just try on this. This will be fixed.
Thank you.
See, somebody else wanted to come up and make some remarks. Can you introduce yourself? And
My name's David Sam with the Transit Safety Line. A lot of you board members know who I am, and you don't know who I am. I'm sure the audience knows who I am. Thanks, Steve. Beautiful comments. That's exactly what we're looking for. This has been going on for years, folks. Continues to go on, as you stated. These changes will be made federally if I have to see through it myself. I won't stop at that, because this type of behavior's gone on for years. And Shelley Lomax said that yesterday on the radio. You heard her. They were doing it when she was a bus driver. This isn't negotiable. I don't know what union you're dealing with that would think this is negotiable. The ATU, safety's not negotiable. You look in the medical field, the unions in the medical field, safety's not a negotiable tool with them. If safety is a priority, they don't negotiate it. It's merely a policy that's put in place, and it's a done deal. Other unions, I'm sure it's the same way within their industries. You don't tell doctors and nurses that safety's not the priority, and you don't see them working massive hours like that. They're required not to. This is a bus operator. You're hauling potentially 65 people every time they're driving a route. That's a lot of people they're affecting. Now let's talk about the people you're killing. They're not even riding the bus. Really? Come on, guys. Let's get this together. These aren't negotiable things. Safety is not negotiable. It never has been, never should be, and please don't let it be. Please.
thank you. Appreciate your comments. So I guess the comments I would make is what you're hearing here, and thank you both for coming here today. I guess I also want to thank the media for really spotlighting this issue. I think it's raised its visibility and really shown that this is the time to really react and take care of this now. We've waited too long to get changes in the contract, and so I agree with Director Clark that your suggestions and what you have here is right in line with what we think too, is that the union and we ought to be able to come up with common sense solutions and agree to that very quickly. There's a win, I think, for both sides here to be able to make this happen. But if not, we should be going down to the legislature and actually looking for some clarity, making some changes to define what hours of service are, for example, and other things, so that we aren't having this debate and dialogue again. So,
You know what, I believe that we need to have that dialogue. Last night, I was at the Legislation 101 meeting that was held in Portland City Building right down here. They're willing to work with us. They're ready. And Mr. Bethel, thank you. Thank you for stepping up and supporting that. I'll be looking for your advocacy down there. I'm from out of state, so there's not a whole lot I can do interstate laws.
So-
But you can help me, and the board can help me. The board can, if you guys can support that, awesome, let's do it. Here's the paperwork, I'll have someone here make you some copies of Legislation 101.
and so again, thank you. What I would like to suggest, Mr. General Manager, is that you actually come back to us with our next meeting with an update of where we are with the union in terms of coming up with those common sense solutions to deal with this. And frankly, if we're no place, then I think we ought to talk about options 1, 2, and 3 to deal with this. So I think the time is right, and again, safety is of utmost importance and a priority for this board, for the management of the agency, because we provide a service that everybody relies on and should count on as being safe. So again, I thank you for taking the time to come in here. I think your petition is right on. I would encourage you to keep gathering signatures, and if we need you, we'll call on you if we need to go to Salem to actually look at changes being made. So again, thank you.
And I'm gonna talk to Noah after the meeting, and see if you accompany me down to the union, and we'll talk to Bruce Hanson and get the public influence into the union so this mediation can take place. You can get this done, whatever you have to do to make that policy happen. Thank you, sir.
All right, you both.
Thank you.
I should ask, are there any other comments or thoughts from the board before we move on our agenda? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You can have all of those. So, Ms. McFarland, were you done? You had some other
I
issues?
did have just a couple other
Okay.
updates on the board, if you will. Other business does continue, as you know.
I'll just do separate interviews. Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, I'll speak to you later and have. Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Yesterday and today.
Legislation.
Cool.
Excellent.
The issue of appeal of the arbitrator's ruling from last summer is being heard by the arbitration board. So we would expect a pretty rapid for the ERB response to this. They've been very good about expediting this issue, but we probably won't really know until the very earliest, I think, would be April. But again, we expect from what we've heard that hearing to be completed today. That's actually within 3 days, so I think it's going to be getting and reports so far are generally pretty positive in terms of the rightness, if you will, of the arbitrator's ruling. I'd also just note that we did file another ULP as the union did not show up for the last 3 scheduled negotiation sessions, and that was one in November and 2 in December. We wanted to file the ULP because, as you know, the arbitration provisions, where the hours of service and all these other things are really wrapped up in this contract and other reforms, require the clock to start ticking. 150 days of the negotiation plus the cooling off periods plus then mediation periods plus the time to schedule an arbitration hearing. And our goal is obviously to get this moving as quickly as we can for the new contract from 2012 to 2015. And it's in, I think, our employees' very best interest to get that going more quickly. It's in their financial interest because the increment of healthcare costs that the freeze is affecting paychecks more so than our actual proposal. So there, I think, is financial incentive for our employees to have this resolved soon, and we would hope the union would help us do that, whether through negotiations or if it needs to be another arbitration. So anyway, the ULP was really meant to begin to establish the ticking of the clock so that we can move this along, but also to mark to the Employment Relations Board what's going on with our negotiations, because I think We want to be very transparent about that with the meeting in terms of the actions. Our attempts, our strong attempts to move these negotiations forward in a very timely way. And I just would note to everybody again that we post everything about these contracts on the web. It's at www.trimet.org/new contract. All the proposals are there, all the correspondence are there. And so we try to keep that very current. That's for the general public as well as employees. Just wanted to update you on those two very important items as well.
Questions?
With that, yeah, any questions?
I have two questions. So what you're saying is we might actually have clarity from the appeal by the union on the arbitrator's ruling before we have to lock and load on the next year's budget.
We're hoping.
Okay.
No
promise, but
No promise
there is some
when it comes to
optimism we're going to be able to
judges,
get that.
yes.
So that's important.
Yeah.
And then the other issue, which has been at the heart of them not coming to the table, is this issue about the open meetings
Right.
laws pertaining to the union negotiations. I didn't hear you mention that, or did?
I did, and perhaps Janet can update you on where that procedure is.
Yeah, we filed a declaratory judgment action in Multnomah County Circuit Court, which has jurisdiction to consider the public meetings law. And so we've asked the court to consider whether our negotiating team, as it's constituted, makes the meetings with the union a public meeting. We don't think that it does. The union wants to conduct some discovery, which unfortunately is going to slow down the process. We had hoped for a quick resolution.
Yeah.
We hoped that they would stipulate 2 facts, but we now understand they want to take 3 depositions, and they've submitted a request for production for documents that go back for years. So that will have a tendency to delay the progress of the lawsuit. Like I said, our hope was that we could probably resolve it in 30 days, but I think that's not going to happen this time.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but thank you for that information. All right, well, let's move on then. Olivia, you're going to give us an update of what's happening with the legislature?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, to catch us up on time, I'd be happy to answer questions. Just a couple of quick comments. The state legislature will actually induct the new members on Monday, but then they'll go home, and then they'll come back in February. The session will really get started. But we do have the committee assignments. We have 8 new legislators from our regional delegation, which is a challenge to get to know new people and bring them up to speed on TriMet. We know that there are going to be a lot of big labor issues next session, starting with PERS. If you read the paper, you know all about that. And other labor issues, including our own, I think, in that. And what we just heard today, I think we'll be pursuing that as well. As far as transportation-specific legislation goes, I think the CRC will take a lot of energy, a lot of focus. I think it's a very high priority for the governor on sort of his second tier list. It's #1 on the second tier. It will be interesting to see what the legislature does in terms of adding anything to that package. We'll see. It's got a ways to go, but I think he's got a very ambitious agenda in trying to get it out of Salem, get the Oregon's $450 million contribution to the project out of the building in March. We'll see. There's also Connect Oregon. Some of you are familiar with that. Actually, TriMet's been a recipient of one Connect Oregon grant for Renew the Blue on the Blue Line. The governor's put that in his budget one more time around, but this time it's reduced. It was $100 million down to $40 million, now back up to $60 million. And he's put it partly on the general fund, which will be very interesting to see how that fares. It traditionally has been lottery-backed bonds. But that's something that we qualify to apply for connecting capital projects in small investments. Higher ed will take a lot of time in the legislature. There are other priorities, healthcare, the next iteration of the CCOs, the continuation of the hospital tax. Those are some of the governor's high priorities, but like I said, transportation sort of CRC, #1 issue, second tier. There are other smaller transit issues I think will continue to beat the drum on elderly and disabled transit as we have for the last few years. In the Connect Oregon conversation, there'll be some dialogue about operating funds for transit across the state. With the loss of the VENTI program, there are a lot of smaller transit agencies that are really hurting, so I think you'll see that conversation continue. I just want to make one comment about at the federal side, jump back up to the federal level. A year ago at this time, it's amazing to think where we were, in that we were looking at a Congress, a House, that passed a budget bill that would have cut transit by about 30%. And today, we're looking at flat funding. And we have a continuation of the surface transportation bill, which is the MAP 21, which you've heard about vis-a-vis the safety issue. So it's a completely different picture at the federal level, which is a good thing. What I failed to mention too is at the state level, we now have a Democratic majority in the House, which will change the dynamics there. Very interesting, and a new speaker coming from North Portland. So with that, really briefly, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and looking forward to your participation in this session.
So you mentioned Tina Kochak is the new House Speaker?
Yes, she will.
Will
We
be.
expect she will. The
Expect.
vote hasn't actually happened.
If she's not, it'll be a real surprise.
Yeah. Yes.
Things do happen in Congress now, and in the House. Okay, thank you.
Anything?
Go.
A quick question, Neil, I know you've had conversations with Northwest Natural about the possibility of utilizing gas, liquid gas as a form of fuel.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity within either the state legislature or the federal government in terms of grants that would allow us some funding to do some tests, conversions, purchase of vehicles that would be for the purpose of utilizing gas as a fuel and get out of the heavy fuels?
And I would just note, we're probably as greedy as anybody in terms of looking for grant opportunities with the federal government. I think they've been foreclosed a bit by going into the fixed formulas. So some of those energy-related programs that we relied on aren't quite as robust as they were. So I'm not sure that there's great opportunity there. But there is, and I believe the federal tax extension bill that was recently passed did include an extension of a credit for natural gas use in public transit. So that's one thing that we need to look at. The issue for us is there's conversion costs at the facility. There's a premium with the buses themselves, but typically the cost of the fuel will pay for that premium related to the natural gas bus. But what has tripped us up is the need to have essentially the fueling requirements and the safety requirements go along with that fueling installed in the garages. So that's one of the issues that we've been talking. I've been talking to Northwest Natural about to see if there's a way that they might help finance that in one way or another. So yeah, that's a work in progress. But we should keep our eyes open for any opportunities on the energy front particularly.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So Chris and Tom, e-fare and mobile app. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 3 innovative projects we wanted to give you an update on. And I believe you may have a one-pager in your packet. Starts with TriMet Board update, bus ticket printer, mobile phone, and ticketing for e-fare. So we're going to start with the bus ticket printer, and I'll call John up to our, looks like a psychological experiment, but trust me, it's not. So we're going to talk about a bus ticket printer. So what is that? That's a printer that we're going to install on all fixed route buses.
The big gray box or the little black
The
box?
little gray.
Black box is the operator's interface. This is the ticket printer for the passenger.
Yes.
This is just our test unit underneath.
You got it. So the idea is that this will replace the existing decades-old tissue transfers that bus operators have today that they tear off based on where they're at the route. So how this would work is the customer will still put their cash or unvalidated tickets into the fare box, just like they do today. So they would walk up and do that. I'm going to go ahead and simulate that, what that looks like. So Everything for the customer stays the same as it does today. So John, being a bus driver today, instead of managing our onboard vehicle technology, the bus stops, and as the bus stops and he opens the door, it automatically triggers the fare screen. So as the customer, I board. Now the fare box stays the way it is today. So I put in my cash, my unvalidated ticket, just like I do today, into the fare box. So in this scenario, I'm going to put my $5 in and ask the operator for a $5 all-day pass, adult pass. So he simply presses a button and I go over and grab it off the printer. I'll go ahead and print it just for show and tell. And go ahead and print maybe a couple of 2-hour tickets as well. So this concept is that it replaces several functions. I'm just going to hand those down to you in a second. Yeah. So the concept behind this is that it really changes a couple of key objectives for us. This is good. Yes. You can share and enjoy, and I'll walk you through this. This really. So what you have here is a 1-day pass, which is currently just a tissue transfer, a day pass, and a 2-hour ticket. So there's 3 primary objectives. The first one is that the customer experience, we believe, will be greatly improved because these are much easier to read and they are consistent with what we issue now at ticket machines, out of retail stores, etc. It's very easy design to read, and it's an intuitive design. This piece of paper that they would carry around after it's torn is not quite as intuitive. We do believe that this will help significantly reduce some leakage that we have. These are not as hard to calculate.
That's a financial term, right?
Financial term, yes, thank you. Yes. Essentially what we're looking at is the security is not nearly as tight on tissue paper type concept versus a thermal printed ticket with that foil strip on the bottom. So that's something that we've added to all our ticket stock over the last few years. We also know that one of the key elements for this is that this will allow the system to generate the ticket with just a 2-hour time. So as it is now, the operator has to move the cutter bar up as they go down and progress down the system to try and get to the right result of how much time to tear. And that can be very difficult to do, to really kind of peg that 2-hour mark. And technically the policy is 1 hour past downtown arrival or last scheduled stop, or 2 hours on the weekend. And this really just makes it consistent with rail. So it's 2 hours on rail, just like it is if it comes out of the ticket machine or if you validate the validator. And it's clearly illustrated on the ticket when it expires. So it doesn't become a bit of a conflict between the operator and the customer whether or not it's valid. So we do see that this has some benefits to roll out for the public as well as for our operators. As far as measuring the success of this, we want to make sure that there is some revenue improvement here. We do see that physical control will be important. These tissue transfers are no longer just kind of freestanding. This is a roll locked up in that unit that cannot be accessed by anybody except the operator to change it out. The customer experience is that it's more or less easy to use and simple to understand, which is certainly a model that we have at TriMet. To make sure the customer experience is what we expect it to be, which is frankly better than it is today, and that our dwell times are not impacted by this change in process versus the tissue transfer versus poking a button and spitting out. We're going to do a pilot in mid-March. It'll be a small pilot. We have to firm up the details, but perhaps up to maybe a dozen buses on a couple of bus lines. In 2 to 4 weeks, we're going to measure those dwell time impacts and also have onboard surveys, intercept surveys to capture the results of that. So we anticipate good news, and if no adjustments need to be made to the plan, then we'll have a full rollout in the middle of June 2013, system-wide on all fixed route buses.
Does everybody understand what dwell time is?
Why
you tell us what the
time
time
taken
is?
to provide the ticket, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's more or less, we don't want the operator stop doing other things for a long period of time instead of just serving passengers and driving. So any impact to the bus just waiting there and not being efficient and driving and picking up passengers is dwell time.
Okay.
So it's, yeah.
So in other words, this needs to be as fast as the paper transfer.
Yes.
Hopefully, the driver will not be able to do this while driving.
So what we have is the system changes to the fare screen as soon as they park, stop, and open the door. Once they, I think it's close the door, is it, John?
Close the door and then actually depart the stop. It's a
Depart the
very
stop.
short distance of driving after closing the door.
Okay, as soon as they do that, the screen changes back to their normal screen they use for driving the bus. However, they are able to, if they so choose, to override that. They could go in and find the fare screen and print that. So that is configurable. That would be an option that they have to do.
Why would we want that provision?
Well, there are many, this is an example, but definitely open for dialogue. There are many instances where the customer gets on the bus and they're looking for their change and their money, and the bus is full, and they go back, and there's kind of a grace period, so to say, before they get the money put in the fare box and communicate with the driver what they want. So there are instances where the driver, as able to interact, would be able to still print the ticket while they were driving. So they are able to do a lot of things on their system as their interface as an operator, but that is one that we continue to allow them to do.
I just know that my family yells at me if I pick up my cell phone and look at it while driving. Good for them. Yeah. And I'm wondering if there could just be a standard operating procedure where an operator would say, "I'd be glad to help you at our next stop." You folks manage the agency, we set policy, but I do think the conversation we just had about operators and the length of the tour of duty they have, hours, all this sort of feeds together.
I don't disagree. I think that is a policy decision we need to look at and make sure that safety is what the forefront of the decision.
I think it's true with any new technologies that we'll have a little period where we'll need to sort of figure out and adjust the rules accordingly. But I think that's very good.
And we'll certainly be part of the operator training.
Yeah, the bus, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Please. Mine go back to the expiration time of 2 hours. When you talked about the current policy, was it 1 hour?
1 hour.
And then
Yeah.
1 hour past
Downtown.
Now, how would this work if I got on at the first stop over there? Let's say all the way out East County, very last stop, and I'm coming into downtown or beyond downtown. What happens to my time period?
Sure. So the spirit of that transfer was intended to be a 2-hour ticket. There's a bit of history there that goes back quite a ways. As soon as they board and that ticket is printed, it will be 2 hours. It will be consistent for every single customer system-wide. It's that way on rail today. It has been. But for the bus system, there hasn't been a good mechanism to manage that 2 hours because every minute, right, they have to move the tissue transfer, and that would be even another safety issue to consider. So it would be consistent now on rail, but it has always intended to be just a 2-hour transfer. So now we're able to systematically support what we've always intended to do, which is that 2 hours. So I think one consideration is people are likely used to getting more than 2 hours, and that's part of the process of the transfer not being torn or operators just moving it up an extra hour or so and carrying it more time. That's not what we wanted with this ticket. This allows us to support our goals, and that helps with fair.
So maybe I can just put it another way. The reason it was an hour past downtown was that was the best simulation of 2 hours that we could do, and it was probably generous in that regard, because generally from the end of a line to downtown is not just a while.
So the reason why I'm asking is that we're going to roll this out in March. Some educational material needs to hit the street like yesterday. We all know the argument we had, and will probably come up again, extending the transfer time, what it does for people who are transferring, who can't go to the store and make it within a certain period of time. That we are very well making them aware of these changes, what it is, so that when it comes out, it is not another negative piece that's dumped on the TriMet of